AI is touching us everywhere, right? When you switch on Netflix, how are the movies recommended to you? When you go to Facebook, how are the news recommendations coming? When you're typing, like searching on Google every day, how are the search results coming to you?
Like how we are trying to address this, there is a lot of progress has been made in certain areas like image and speech, but there are a lot of areas that are still unexplored.
There's layers and layers of explainability of how AI is working, and I think that's where the community needs to do a much better job, and my company as well.
And now we are entering the new phase of online education, right? So we're losing the human touch. What does it mean for us? What does it mean for us in the 5 years' times?
The cloud is great. It solves a lot of real-world problems, but it's not just one cloud anymore. Public clouds, private clouds, edge clouds. The average business uses 5 different cloud providers. It's become chaotic and complex, with unpredictable costs, inconsistent security, multiple management tools, and different formats for workloads that span cloud platforms and providers. But it doesn't have to be that way. The Dell Technologies Cloud, powered by VMware, can be the one constant across your clouds. It brings consistent infrastructure and operations to your multi-cloud environment, so you can choose the right cloud for each application. A public cloud that lets you easily tap into services, a private cloud that's fully under your control, or the edge with cloud as a service. With a true hybrid cloud experience, your business becomes more agile with simple workload migration and easy onboarding for new assets. Your teams get to market faster. With simplified operations and automated processes, you reduce risk and strengthen your security profile. And with Dell Technologies Cloud, you have flexible consumption options, reducing your total cost of ownership. Like it or not, the business world often requires many clouds. Now, that's easier than ever, with consistent infrastructure, operations, and services across all your clouds. You get the cloud without the chaos. The Dell Technologies Cloud.
So hi, my name is Lalit Gajre. I'm one of the co-chair for the AIML track. First of all, sorry for the delay. The grand keynotes got a little bit delayed, so we're supposed to start at 9:30. So my apologies out there, but I think we have a great participation right now. So basically, I'm opening up the AIML track. You saw the agenda at the beginning. We actually going to start right now with a panel titled AI to Accelerate the Transformation. And the moderator for that session is Don Callahan. And I'll briefly introduce him and then he'll take over from there. So Dan Callahan is executive partner at Bridge Growth Partners and serves as executive chairman of Time, where he's leading a comprehensive digital transformation of this iconic media brand. Acknowledged internationally as a leader in both the financial services and technology industries, Mr. Callahan was most recently the Chief Administrative Officer and Global Head of Operations and Technology at Citigroup. He retired from Citigroup in December of 2018 and now serves on the boards of Tata Consultancy Services, an Indian company, Vex Inc., Core AI, Capco, and Ascidian, Bridge Growth Partners backed company. At Citigroup, Mr. Callahan managed a complex set of businesses and services spanning more than 100 countries, a multi-billion-dollar operating budget, and critical systems infrastructure, including the bank's cybersecurity initiatives. Prior to joining Citigroup, Mr. Callahan served in senior executive positions at Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse. Earlier in his career, he spent 12 years at IBM, where he held a number of management positions, including Director of Strategy for IBM Japan. So please welcome Don.
Great, thank you very much. I apologize for that long introduction. I also apologize for the photo you see with me with a tie on. I think I'm the only one in the entire 7,000 people watching that had a tie photo on there. I can't remember the last time I had a tie on. It had to be March or something like that. When we talked earlier as a team here to talk about AI, we thought we'd start with each one of us doing about a 1-minute introduction so you get a feel for who each of us are. So why don't we just go in the order of the screens here. Vibhu, do you want to start?
I'm Debu Chatterjee. I currently lead the AI engineering in ServiceNow. I was startup entrepreneur. My company was acquired by ServiceNow in 2017. Prior to that, I have spent a significant part of my life in enterprise software in companies like Oracle, Informatica, and Fair Isaac. My background is definitely enterprise, and I have spent now over 3 decades in 3 different areas. First decade in mostly networking and apps software, then databases and distributed systems, and finally in data science. I'm an alumni of IIT Kharagpur, UNC Chapel Hill, and an MBA from Wharton. And in addition to that, I am also now mentoring at the IIT startups. So I'll do a plug for IIT startups here. That's my brief introduction.
That's great. Next. Umesh, you want to go?
Absolutely. Umesh Sachdev, founder, CEO of Uniphore. Pleasure to be with my co-panelists and all the audience virtually today at this first big virtual TiEcon event. Uniphore is a artificial intelligence and automation company focused on the customer service part of an enterprise, which is in the front office. Over the last 13 years, Uniphore has applied statistical modeling, as it was called back then, and machine learning and AI to improve the quality of service in contact centers, gain agent productivity, and drive automation. My career, which is coming up to about 2 decades, I've been a serial entrepreneur, a computer science engineer by education, and I've done 2 startups, both applying AI in different fields related to technology.
And did you receive some sort of age-related award recently?
Yes, I'm very fortunate. 2 weeks ago, Silicon Valley Business Journal included me in their 40 under 40 list. And Don calling out to Time, very honored in 2016 in the Time magazine's list of 10 next generation leaders. I was included as, I don't understand why, but the only one from the technology field as changing the world to make it a better place.
Well, I understand why, and it had nothing to do with me. So I think that's just terrific. Dickey?
Yes. Yeah, my name is Dickey Singh, and then I'm the founder and CEO of Cast.app. So I've founded 2 companies before Cast in the data intelligence space and in healthcare. I believe the last mile intelligence delivery to end customers is still largely unsolved. So Cast is a B2B company, and we automatically generate audio and visual reports from data. So we sell to financial companies and revenue teams to help them explain complex concepts to their customers, and for a simple reason of driving actions. A couple of examples would be explaining and adjusting the 401k contributions, or using usage patterns and forecasting to proactively renew services.
That's terrific. I don't know who would like to go next. Valeria?
And that's me. Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, it's my pleasure to be here today and to share my thoughts with such an outstanding audience of entrepreneurs and futuristic individuals. My name is Ravi Saraogi. I'm an emerging technology global delivery lead at PwC Labs. At PwC Labs, we focus on delivery of digital transformations programs of work. We build, we design, and we implement innovative technologies across our internal and external clients. We utilize solutions such as Industry 4.0, mass customization, AI, machine learning, data analytics, based on the customer needs and requirements. I have been in technology consulting for quite some time now, for probably from the beginning of my career after I graduated from the university. And I work across New Zealand, Australia, Southeast Asia, Europe, and now I'm here in the US. It's been my pleasure. In addition to my consulting career, I'm also a research fellow at the University of Auckland, New Zealand. My research team is focusing on how emerging technology is impacting the human decision-making and decision intelligence. Specifically, we look at the responsible AI, ethics around AI, adoption and disruption of AI across people everyday life. We have one overall agenda with our research team is to understand how emerging technology can actually help and solve humanity issues, because we live in a VUCA world, and it's a world surrounded by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Those challenges being grouped by the UN as 17 sustainable goals. So I think all of us here, the one who actually build technology, work with technology, every time we provide services or we build something, we need to think about it. What do we do in order to help our world to solve the challenges and impact the humankind?
That's great. And you really are global. I think you're heading for another airplane as soon as you leave.
Yes,
leave
definitely.
here.
Yeah. Still, but it's within the US at that time. I can't go overseas.
It's easy. It's easy. And Krishna, CEO of Fiddler, would you?
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me on the panel. I'm Krishna. I'm the founder, CEO of Fiddler AI. We are a startup in the Bay Area building an explainable AI platform to help companies build trust into AI. We've been working on this platform for the past 2 years. We work with companies that are operationalizing AI and help them monitor, explain, and understand how their AI models are working, and make sure that they are compliant, make sure that there's no bias in those models, make sure that they are transparent, so that they are de-risking their AI and making it operational across a wide variety of business use cases. Prior to starting Fiddler, I was an engineering lead at Facebook. I was leading an explainable AI platform for Newsfeed, where I helped build transparency for billions of users that consume Newsfeed. And I've had a long career in technology, working on data and machine learning at companies like Pinterest, Twitter, and Microsoft in the past 15 years. Super excited to be on this panel and happy to share what we are working on and talk about AI in general. Thanks.
We're super excited to have you. Is there anyone I've missed? I don't have the full screen. Is that it? Okay. Well, great. Then let's kick this off. I've been watching, I watched almost all day yesterday, and the content has just been terrific. The amount of time AI comes up, it seems to be about 100% of the sessions they can't get through before they turn to the topic of AI. And yet, in a pre-discussion we had as a team, we were saying, where is AI at this stage? And this is going to be my question to all of you. I'd like you all to jump in. It's, where do you think we are in this stage of AI? And let me just remind all of you, I'm sure you know this story, but AI was founded at Dartmouth College in May. In fact, I believe it was May 16th of 1956. Happens to be my birthday. And I feel like for the next 60 years, neither one of us did a lot. But now all of a sudden it seems like AI's being empowered, is being empowered with data, is being empowered with economic compute cost structure, that it's really coming into a new wave. And yet, I had a call this morning with a senior executive of a large insurance company, global insurance company, and I asked, where do you think AI is in terms of being transformational, accelerating your growth? And he said, I think we're still years away. It's at this stage talk. I'm not seeing the impact. So that's the question. Where is the bid-ask spread in your mind between what's being done academically and what's being able to get business executives to charge forward and improve their businesses? And you know, Umesh, you're on the largest screen that's up right now. Why don't you start us, and then everyone else jump in on your own?
Don, this is obviously the most important topic that all of us here on this panel kind of talk within our companies and within our institutes every day. And you're right, AI has been around for a while. However, to me, even in the business that I run, what's changed, I'd say in the last 5 or 6 years, is coming together of 3 big technology trends, which has accelerated why AI has become mainstream in TiEcon today. The first was the advent of cloud and availability of just low-cost processing, almost democratizing availability of compute resources to a lot of people. The second has been almost democratizing the algorithms of AI with tools like TensorFlow and others, which have made these things which remained in either academic institutes or large enterprises. They made them available to developers around the world in a far more meaningful way. A decade ago, we were calling it operations research, and then we said it's statistical modeling, and now we call it machine learning and AI. So we've known the trick of the trade for a while. What was missing is availability and access to large amounts of data. And then even if you had large amounts of data, you didn't have the compute to process it fast enough for the models to be meaningful. And all that's changed in a big, meaningful way. And so where are we today? One, what's happening in the academic world is continue to push the envelope towards what we know as singularity. That's the ultimate dream, etc. But in the enterprise world, the insurance executive that we spoke to, or the many banking or telecom service provider customers of my company, not just in the US, but around the world, we found applied applications of AI beginning to do what I call human augmentation in a bigger way, right? Driving automation, driving assistance. The field that I'm most comfortable talking about is the contact centers. We all know, the world employs 15 million people in contact centers. And, sometimes we have not pleasant experiences when we try to reach out to these enterprises on their 1-800 numbers. But what we don't realize is the life of the contact center agent is really hard. They're dealing with hundreds of callers every day who have tons of issues and complaints, and the agent do their best with the available tools to solve that issue. The opportunity to apply AI to assist that employee of the organization in solving that problem in half the time, not putting the customer on hold as much as they used to because the AI is able to supplement some of the tasks, etc. Right. It's applications like those in various forms of the enterprise, whether it's front office or back office, which are beginning to show economic value in huge.
But are they, not to interrupt you, but are they, my wife yesterday tried to turn our cable on in a cabin that we were loaning to some people who wanted Wi-Fi. And it took 3 calls, finally found someone very good in the Philippines. There was no AI. How can this be, what's this year, 2020? Mm-hmm. 2020, and that's still going on. And I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just trying to make sure where is AI?
Can I join the conversation here?
Please, jump right in.
Umesh did an awesome job of talking about applied AI. He talked about human augmentation. He talked about contact center. My company was acquired by ServiceNow. I'm leading ServiceNow AI engineering. And ServiceNow is really the company is trying to help a lot of applied AI happen because we are really a platform companies. Like we have a low-code, no-code environment. We have lots of applications. We work in the services spaces, in the operations management space, in the customer service management. So the problem which Don, you just mentioned about 3 calls and contact centers and stuff, it actually ends up coming as probably a request into a ServiceNow system, which is it's a digital workflow. And we use a digital workflow to do transformations. And that's where, we are using our AI technology to help not only figure out where exactly this problem should be routed to, at what priority and at what assignment group to the right person. But then when the person starts actually working on the case and the person has an ability to, figure out what they think, like things like guided playbooks, right? How does the person now take a problem and work through the guided playbook? That's an AI problem. And different verticals are different types of playbooks which are required. We need to solve that problem there. How does the person then, if the problem has been solved before, how do I find out quickly how the problem is solved? That's a similarity problem, right? We have a similar case which has been either closed or open, and then we take AI and apply clustering and word vector and other techniques which exist today, and we solve the problem. So there's a whole class of problems which,
But you're absolutely right, and so you're giving us reasons for hope. But I would think the syntax here would be simple, such as turn on service, an IVR system, right? Where is this? But yeah, Krishna, jump in, and then Dickey, I'd love to get your view.
Yes, absolutely.
Just to chime in, I think, when people talk about AI, AI is not everywhere, they're probably thinking about the Spielberg movie or the self-driving car not being in motion. They talk about those things, but if you kind of see and pay attention, AI is touching us everywhere, right? When you switch on Netflix, how are the movies recommended to you? When you go to Facebook, how are the news recommendations coming? When you're typing, like searching on Google every day, how are the search results coming to you? And you're ordering on Instacart or Uber Eats. Everywhere, AI algorithms are actually working to impact our lives on a day-to-day basis. So there is actually a lot more tangible problems that AI is solving today and is able to solve today very effectively. And those are the problems that exist in enterprises today. And AI can actually have a huge impact, and is actually having a huge impact.
No
those
doubt.
are the problems that I think are the sort of, that there's a lot of business impact for enterprises in general.
So it's starting, but there's a lot of room to go. Dickey.
Yeah, so I want to answer this question slightly differently. AI has been all about like mimicking the human being, right? And then I want to answer it like, let's look at like vision, let's look at like speech, and then let's look at like smell, right? We've been always, we look at our various, the sense of like vision. So we have done a lot of work in vision. Like in the last decade, we've experienced like what we call the ImageNet moment, which has made image recognition, drone field inspections, autonomous cars, the Amazon Go Kart, and all those things like possible. And in speech, a lot of things has happened in like natural language and generation too, right? We have come a long way from Markov chains to recurring neural networks to LSTMs to GRUs, and most recently BERT and the generative pre-trained models like we keep hearing on from OpenAI, GPT, GPT-2, and GPT-3. We've done an amazing job. And then if you narrow the field considerably, like what we did like years ago, the first language translation was only 60 sentences from Russian to English and back to Russian. We can even solve this data to generating like narrations like what we are currently doing. So, but I feel like smell is still an unexplored area, right? And then it may not happen that quickly because we don't have the need to like save odors unlike like photos or so. But depending on like how we are trying to address this, there is a lot of progress has been made in certain areas like image and speech, but there are a lot of areas that are still unexplored.
Wow, you pushed our thinking on that. Valeria?
So I think in my case,
go ahead.
Yeah, I will be quick. I know it's time as always. I think we just need to be a bit careful how we look at the question, right? If we look at our corporations, obviously cost involved, money involved. We look at the effectiveness and efficiency. So the probably is not that upfront as we think. However, if we look at the services, we look at the research, we are already out there, right? We start using AI with the human mind, right? Every one of us saw the Elon Musk last video, right? That we're putting the chip in our mind, right? So I think we're definitely stepping into the industry 5.0, where the human mind will start interacting with AI, where our decisions will be much better predicted. However, we have to, again, keep our kind of strategy in place. Where do we look at? Do we look at the organizations? Do we look at the corporate world, or there are services? So in my case, yes, I see it's definitely moving forward.
That's encouraging. So I'd say the summary there is it's early days, but it's not 1956. This thing has really got momentum, and all the drivers are in place, as all of you alluded to. Let me ask a different type of question here. You know, having this many CEO founders all together who really understand AI, is there a chance you could tell the audience, the virtual audience, about failures you've had and how you think AI, as it is today, could help them as they think about driving the entrepreneurial world forward? And Umesh, why don't I start with you again, and then anyone else jump in as you'd like.
Well, I'd say one of the biggest areas that we still as a community need to come together and do a better job, and I'm being self-critical here, is generally the area of explainability of AI. A lot of us from the software background or otherwise sometimes confuse AI as the older software code where you write the code and it does a task. Whereas AI, it's all about, much like how the human brain works, it takes up a lot of information and it's learning what it's seeing every day, and it's constantly changing the way it reacts to situations on a daily basis. So when you deploy one of the applied applications, like I said, in an enterprise environment, I'm a B2B type entrepreneur, and when we go sell something to an insurer or a banker or a telecom service provider, what's the expectation that you're setting about when day one this new AI product goes live? What will it do, right? How will it behave? And I think the whole explainability of whether it will be 95% accurate on day one, and what does that accuracy look or feel like? Or should you just rather compare with what was going on before this AI was switched on? What was life then, and what's the baseline? What are we improving? As a quick example, 30 seconds, call center agents, when they hang up the phone after the third call with your wife, they would have had to write a summary in a log in the CRM, right? Now, AI, like Dickey was saying, because AI has speech and natural language, AI can write this summary on its own because it heard the 3 calls and understands what was good, what was bad. But sometimes when you read that summary, you say, hey, AI missed that one critical element. And maybe you're right, because AI may not have yet learned it. It's going to take some more calls before it learns it. But was the agent going to write it in the first place, right? And so there's layers and layers of explainability of how AI is working. And I think that's where the community needs to do a much better job, and my company as well.
That's great. Who'd like to jump in?
I completely agree, because I think Umesh played the ball into our court. We are essentially building an explainable AI platform for exactly that reason, right? So one of the big problems that AI faces today is that trust problem that Umesh alluded to. And I happened to sort of work on it and face it at Facebook, where we had a lot of black box AI, quote unquote black box AI, and did not have a lot of controls to understand how the AI algorithms were working. And if you kind of see what the news around TikTok and all of what's happening, the national security risks that the quote unquote their black box algorithms seem to pose, this is actually a sort of a huge moment in time for companies thinking about AI, to sort of think about it from a different way, right? So sort of not like go sort of the explainable way versus kind of the black box way. And so there is a different way of actually building and operationalizing AI, which could also yield a lot more business process efficiencies. Your business users will be much more comfortable using these explainable AI products. For example, let's say you're deploying AI for a capital allocation system inside a bank, and your business folks who are consuming capital allocations decisions would be much more comfortable receiving those decisions from a system that can explain it. Why is the portfolio allocated that way versus just a blindfolded decision. So it's a very important problem. It has many facets around it, and it's something that companies need to pay attention to as their operation.
Yeah, great comments.
I've always chosen to surround myself by great people who are very forward-thinking when it comes to gender issues and diversity. I think diversity is a key and central element of any environment, and I've never been in an environment where diversity doesn't lead to a better place. From a science perspective, we know that if you have greater diversity of microbes, for example, in your gut, that you're more likely to be healthy. And that's finding of diversity of microbes in your gut. If you think about the diversity of people in a working environment, it leads to a healthier environment and more innovation.
Who else?
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I will. Sorry.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Maybe I will jump in. I do want to mention the fact that AI is a technology, right? But in order to be successful in any innovation or any project, we need to have people and the processes around it. We've seen so many AI fails at the client side and in our personal life. But what we never compile together is what do we do with the people around those technology? How do we educate them? How do we upskill them? What do we put in place? What is the operating model? What is the center of excellence? Who is actually managing it? And I think that's really the cause of actually failure. The failure is not in the technology, but the failure is the technology surrounded it.
That's great. That's going to come. I'm going to come back to you on that on a different question. But Dickey, I think you were trying to jump in.
Yeah. So I was going to reconnect to your original question about the failures, which I have had a lot of and learned a lot from. So one of the failures that I want to talk about related to AI in my previous company is, I always think of being an entrepreneur and in the SaaS field, in the software, the profit margins or the profit to the revenue ratio has to be like 90% or higher. But if you think about it, that's not possible with AI. And the reason is, deep learning requires a lot of cloud infrastructure. Almost all our solutions have like a human in the loop, which adds costs. And we know it's a given fact that cost of development of an AI application is anywhere between 4 to 6 times that of a typical software application. And then and all the commoditization that's happening, like all the bigger companies like Amazon, Google, they'll continue doing speech and all those kind of things and making it a commodity and making it available for like $16 for a few thousand characters. So that kind of brings into perspective as a startup. What's the model? What should we do? Should we make it look like an NGO or like an academic association, or should we make it more like a software SaaS company where the profit to revenue ratios are 0.9 or 90% or so. So there are some of the things that we have to. So the lesson learned for me from my mistakes is know what you're getting into, expect the times, and then try to use commodity software where you can, so that you can dream of having like a 90% profit margin SaaS company.
That's great. That's great advice. David, would you want to? Yeah. We heard the ServiceNow keynote just a little while ago, talking about failures. That was just an amazing speech. You could probably bring us a personal perspective.
I do actually, and in fact, I agree with Fred Luddy that understanding the customer's problem and solving the customer's problem is more important than the technology which actually goes in to solve the problem.
He even said loving the problem.
Yes,
right? Loving the problem more than I've never heard anyone say that.
Exactly. So and we do have that ethos inside our company. We try to solve the customer's problem. But I will probably step back and say that before my company got acquired with ServiceNow and I started doing all the AI, extended the platform to have AI in it, because before that it was a transactional system. So our company basically seeded the AI into the stack. But my original company was in sales and revenue software, and one of the things is this, the loving the problem. I loved the problem, but the buyers did not love the problem as much I did. I think I was a little ahead of the time. So the crossing the chasm problem is real, because even though you think the problem is there, customers necessarily do not realize that they have a problem and they should be adopting it. And then even if they have to adopt it, they have to set the processes behind it. So in AI, in fact, which true to what Dickey was saying, it is not a pure software or pure services play. It's somewhat like a hybrid play. The software is available for you to improve the productivity of the process or the workflow, or understanding the image or the text or whatever the problem is. But there's also a requirement to actually get it implemented initially, or at least bootstrap the implementation through some additional help, which may initially reduce the margin of a business given that amount of services going in. And that is actually a learning which I have seen both from my startup days, and also I'm seeing it today in my corporate days, where I don't have to worry about sales, but I do have to worry about adoption, because I have to have, once the sale has happened, so I have to have my internal partners aligned to actually use the product the way we want to do it and learn from it. And because this whole AI thing is actually a shift left, right? You provide something, you learn from it, then you iterate, you build a better product, and it continues to grow. And that model is very different from something where it's rule-based and everything is well defined, and you develop it and you have a great user experience, because you're building experience out of data, and the data can shift and the experience will shift, and it's a constantly adjusting process. So those are things which I've learned, and those are hard problems, because it's as I would say, as a goalkeeper in my team, I would say in this case my goalpost has shifted, and I have to cover that along with what I was planning to do.
That's a great point.
No, it's very well said. Krishna, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying, that's a great point. AI products are never done. I mean, you're continuously iterating and refining them. And so you need to have those people and teams in place and sort of, continually refine those products.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's very well said. Hard stuff really is hard stuff. I think it's Horowitz or someone said that, if I remember the book correctly. Valerie, I said I was going to come back to you on a comment that you made just recently, and it was something that kind of tees up the idea of ethics in my mind. And I'm very focused on education right now, given what's going on in the world and how we've had a sudden shift and interruption to the way it's being done. And I have a two-part question, but let me start. The first one is about ethics and getting the right education around AI in this. And I can tell you, I mentioned my wife earlier and having to be on the phone. She just finished 5 years at a Ivy League school studying ethics, just graduated. And I can tell you, not one of her classes involved AI. It involved legal, it involved medicine, I watched it all. What is the need for us to think about the two of these joining together?
So I think we should just go a bit back, right? Like, we've got biases, and all of our AI mechanisms have been built by extremely smart people, right? All the data scientists, all finished good universities. However, the AI is still biased, right? No matter what, when it makes decisions, it was tabloid all around the world, right? Whether it is female versus male, credit score, and so on. So what's going on, right? Why are we building AI with the biases when we think that we are rational human beings, that we make our decision and we don't have the biases? So I think the problem is that whoever is building is not necessarily being educated, upskilled, informed what are the biases and what are the biases can exist in technology, and how those biases start basically having a multiply effect when we've got the self-learning models, or even when it's just a deep learning mechanisms. So that's the first step. The second step, we need to educate our users. None of us is actually basically aware of what is the technology doing. We give our data away for free, right? We all know that. We plug in our details in every single survey and so on. But even now, post-corona, right, what's happening? We are being tracked. Our temperature getting measured. We're getting the scans all around the airports, all around the places, right? But no one actually knows, what does it mean for me? Do I have any privacy concern? Is my privacy being invaded or not? That's another question, right? Why is no one is actually educating us? All of the global tech giants, right, they all got the policies in place, But those policies are still not the regulations, right? We assume they are using it, but why the end customer is never aware of what each technology and what are the privacy concerns we have. We've got the long list of terms and agreements. No one is reading them. No one knows what's happening. So I think that's why it's important for us to know what is our pros and cons, and also educate everyone. Now we are entering the new phase of online education, right? So we're losing the human touch. What does it mean for us? What does it going to mean for us in the 5 years' times? What is going to be impact for society? Is our kids going to be less human, or they're going to lose their emotional interaction? So I think that's been a big question. There are quite a lot of discussion on this, but the problem is I don't think there are many actions. And I think one of the actions should be is the definitely compulsory educational process.
Compulsory, okay. That's a strong view, and glad to hear it. Others?
Yeah, maybe I can join. So I think the problem with bias into AI comes because as a society we are not a perfectly equitable society, and AI algorithms are drawing data from the society, right? And so if you are essentially, let's say, building a credit card scoring algorithm, let's say last year Apple launched their credit card, and there were complaints from consumers around alleged gender bias. They may not have gender as a variable inside the algorithm because you're not supposed to use it. But there are so many proxy variables like the school you attended, the occupation. There's so much bias built into the society itself that the AI algorithms can, because they are good at discriminating. So the AI algorithms will be able to pull that out, and actually, it will appear as bias. And so this is very important, not just from the education perspective, but also to have the right processes and tools in organizations to validate your AI, to kind of cross-check it with a bunch of stakeholders, so that you're validating the data that you've collected, that you're training your AI models on, and to have multiple stakeholders check your AI, before you launch it to consumers. And this is a huge problem, and not just for certain companies. Every company is worried about it.
Yeah,
tech
every
companies are
company.
worried
No,
about
you're right.
it. Yeah, tech companies are worried
right.
about it.
I think everyone's worried about it. And I think I know in the world that I'm living in, it's one of my top concerns. In theory, we're at a time, but no one has told us that we have to drop yet. So what I want to do is throw it out to the panel for last comments from any of you of things that you think we should have said that haven't been said. And if we have any advice, you're all entrepreneurs and founders, any advice you could pass on that could be helpful. And why don't I start with the 40 under 40 winner?
Well, thank you, Don, for embarrassing me.
Did you get 30 under 30 back then?
I got 35 under 35. That was
Oh no,
Like an average.
but that was MIT. So my closing comments are just wrapping up all the discussions today we've had, and then closing with my advice for somebody starting out in the AI space. I think the whole aspect of where is AI adoption, like they said, the ethics that Valeria and Krishna spoke about, the state of image and speech that Dickey spoke about are not disconnected topics. For me, this is what I call the infinite loop problem. The ethics, as we heard from Krishna, is all about how much data and from where is it being fed for the AI to either pick up the bias or not. And for it to have enough data access, there's adoption that needs to happen. In the consumer world, the adoption is an easier one because Facebook or Apple or Tesla can roll out their AI algorithms at large. In the B2B environment, like David was saying, there is a resistance, right? And so to overcome that resistance, you have to give the customer a huge ROI. You have to show them why will they benefit or save $9 out of $10 and just pay $1 to the AI by doing this. And so the new approach is bringing together AI and automation, the world of RPA and the world of AI kind of coming together. Because if you don't have the adoption, you don't have enough data and therefore bias. So this is kind of an infinite loop problem, and one that cannot be looked at in silos. It has to be looked at holistically. My advice for somebody starting out, there has been no better time in history, first, to be a startup entrepreneur in the technology world because of AI, right? The kind of problems that we can now dream to solve have been unthinkable even a decade ago. And that's the candid truth. We've all spoken today, there's a long way to go. And to me, that just means it's a huge market. It's a huge TAM. Thinking like an investor, this is one that has legs. This is one technology trend that will outlive its hype, as opposed to sort of kill itself during the hype cycle. And so there has been no better time. There are problems around us which AI can solve and haven't been solved in a meaningful way. So there's a ton of areas and opportunities for budding entrepreneurs.
Well, I think that's why don't we leave it at that? Because I am now getting messages telling me it could be an AI message, so we could ignore it if you'd like.
Yeah.
I think this is the right time. I think 1956 was a little early, going back to Dartmouth, but they at least agreed on a term that's been really helpful. And I happen to think for all of you entrepreneurs, this being able to listen to this team, I think is certainly enlightening to me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for tuning in. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.